Welcome friends. Now we are starting our knowledge capsule on service tax liability to be paid by service receiver under reverse charge when there is change in liability or extent of change in liability to be paid by service receiver under reverse charge. So before taking up this particular matter, let's understand what Rule 7 of POT rule says for reverse charge liability. POT for reverse charge is date of payment generally, provided payment is made within 3 months from date of invoice. If payment is not made within 3 months from date of invoice, then date following the end of 3 months would be the POT. And this provision is applicable from 1st October 2014 other than associated enterprises located outside India. For associated enterprises located outside India, POT reverse charge is earliest of the following: date of debit in the books of service receiver or date of payment, whichever is earlier. Now a proviso got inserted by notification number 21/2016 dated 30th March 2016. And what this proviso says? This proviso says when there is change in liability to pay service tax under reverse charge or extent of liability to be paid by service receiver under reverse charge. So this proviso says if service is rendered, invoice is raised before such date of change, then the POT would be date of invoice provided payment is made only after such date of change. To understand in a better way, why there will be change in liability or extent of liability for service receiver to pay, there may be change in abatement rate, composition, or partial reverse charge liability to be paid by service receiver. There are only two partial reverse charge category: renting of motor vehicle to carry passengers and works contract services. Or there is change in service tax rate, or there is new levy coming in from any particular date. So to understand this particular provision in a better way, we would be knowing Krishi Kalyan Cess, which is applicable at the rate of 0.5% on value of all taxable services from 1st June 2016. So effectively, service tax rate is getting changed from 14.5% to 15% from 1st June 2016. So this proviso which got inserted in Rule 7 reverse charge liability, you can understand that you may be service receiver and you have to discharge the service tax liability under reverse charge mechanism. So there will be change to the extent of service tax liability to be paid by service receiver. So to understand in a better way, let's take an example. You are a company and you are taking GTA services, goods transport agency service. You are under reverse charge being company. So there may be two possible situations. There are the Rule 7 POT rules which normally talks about date of payment as a POT for reverse charge liability. But now this proviso got inserted which clearly says if service is received before such date of change, which is 1st June 2016, invoice is raised prior to 1st June 2016, but payment is received thereafter, means after 1st June 2016, then POT would be date of invoice. So effectively we have to work out and understand. Let's say service rendered on 20th May 2016, invoice raised on 25th May 2016, but payment is made on 4th June 2016. So let's look at the provision as per the erstwhile Rule 7 and amended Rule 7. As per erstwhile rule, date of payment is the POT, which is 4 June 2016. What rate applicable? 15%. So you have to pay 30% in terms of abatement notification 26/2012 on 15% as per erstwhile rule. But with the amended rule coming in from 30th March 2016, it says date of invoice would be the POT even though payment is made after 1st June 2016. So to understand in a better way, service rendered on 20th May, invoice raised on 25th May, payment made on 4th June. So what happened? POT for reverse charge liability would be date of invoice, which is 25th May, rate applicable 14.5. So you have to pay 30% tax liability on GTA on 14.5%. It's a good one. Being manufacturer, KKC liability will not be coming back to you. And KKC is not sanvatable to a manufacturer. It would be sanvatable only to a service provider, provided this corresponding change comes in Sanvat Credit Rules 2004. Though Joint Secretary TRU later says KKC credit would be available to a service provider, but to that aspect we are awaiting Sanvat Credit Rules to be amended. So we have discussed this component from reverse charge perspective. Now let's understand what happened for service provider. So we are comparing two possible situations. In the same example, what would be tax liability in the hands of service provider and what would be tax liability in the hands of service receiver. Service receiver you have understand well, but let's look at service provider. Who has to pay service tax under forward charge? Service provider rendering service on 20th May. It is not a reverse charge liability now, it is a forward charge liability. So he is rendering service on 20th May, raising invoice on 25th May, and he is being paid only on 4th June 2016. Now we have to discuss whether KKC, Krishi Kalyan Cess, need to be paid by service provider. Now this is a new levy, Krishi Kalyan Cess, applicable only from 1st June 2016. When this new levy coming in, Rule 5 of POT rule is applicable. And what Rule 5 of POT rule says? Rule 5 sub-rule A says if payment is received, invoice is raised prior to 1st June, KKC will not be applicable. Rule 5B says payment is received and invoice is raised within 14 days from the date service is taxed first time, KKC will not be applicable. But in the instant case, what is happening? We are getting payment on 4th June 2016, which is after 1st June. So we are not satisfying the condition of Rule 5A, hence Krishi Kalyan Cess would be applicable. So what happened? You have raised the invoice on 25th May at the rate of 14.5%. Since you are not satisfying condition of Rule 5A, you have to pay 15%. So either you should pay 0.5% from your pocket or you should raise supplementary invoice to your service receiver. But this liability comes back to you. So if you compare the situation from service provider to service receiver, service provider has to pay KKC for new levy because Rule 5 is contradictory. Rule 7 is a good one made now, which is providing benefit to a service receiver. But moot question lies. Why we are keeping such confusion for taxability, and that too for new levy coming in? Why can't in simple word we can say that if any service rendered prior to 1st June 2016 and invoice is raised prior to 1st June 2016, new levy will not be applicable irrespective of payment made or does not made. But keeping in mind Rule 5 of POT Rule 2011 is contradictory to Section 66B, which is chargeable section. In terms of Apex Court judgment, in the case of Association of Finance and Leasing Services Company, taxable event will always be rendering of service. So why can't we have clarity? Now this reverse charge POT Rule 7 providing proviso giving benefit to the service receiver is not available to a service provider, that is we have explained now. So it is highly advisable we should have simplicity in terms of chargeability. Whenever new levy coming in that case if service rendered prior to cut-off date, invoice is raised along therewith, new levy will not be applicable and should not be subjective on receipt of payment. Having said that, Krishi Kalyan Cess, which is applicable only from 1st June 2016, has got its own impact. For service provider, credit would be available provided they change coming in Sunbit Credit Rules 2004. Otherwise, Joint Secretary TRU letter says credit would be available, but this is a cost to manufacturer. So what happened for Make in India initiative? If this is cost in the hands of manufacturer, it will add up for the cost of manufacturing of goods, and this is not advisable. We suggest this kind of credit, and we all are talking about GST, so cascading should be done away with. When we are moving towards GST, we understand these cess are meant for specific purpose, but not allowing the credit will definitely going to add the cost and go contrary to the Prime Minister initiative of Make in India. Thanks for watching this capsule. In case you require any clarification, please do come back to us. Thank you. Thank you very much.